300 million Instagram followers. Can't be wrong. Don't miss The Rock live on this morning's edition of Get Up. It's in this hour, and we roll along right now. It begins with the play-in last night in Brooklyn between the Cavaliers and the Nets. Tim Legler's in our studio with us here, and Tim, Kyrie Irving came ready to play.
Came ready, got in a rhythm early. He was very aggressive at the start of this, attacking this Cavs defense, which was missing Jared Allen, a big loss. But you can see he was dominating in the mid-range area of the floor. He just gets to certain spots, uses that handle to separate, and had that 18-footer flowing.
Boy, did he ever. Here he is in the closing seconds of the first half, knocking that one down to finish 9 of 9 in the half. The Nets had a 14-point halftime lead, and candidly, he would not cool off as the third quarter began.
Yeah, it took him a little bit to get his first look, but you see the ball movement here in a part of Brooklyn swing out. Kevin Durant could have taken that shot, but he knows where the hot hand was at the time. One more swing. Kyrie Irving steps into a three. Nets continue to roll, and here he is with that left-handed finish, one of the best we've seen at his size to finish in traffic.
Jay-Z loves it. Kyrie finished with 34 points, 12 of 15 from the floor. But you know what? Darius Garland wouldn't let Cleveland go away.
Yeah, and I'm glad he had this run because he had a special year. This is an elite-level talent, one of the best young point guards in the game, and he ended up with 34, and he had a nice spurt there to make this at least a workable margin for the Cavs.
It was. They cut it to 6, but in the end, there was just too much KD. He took over late where Kyrie had taken over early. KD just a walking bucket when you need one.
I mean, it's so tough. 6'11" with a high release, so anywhere he wants to go on the floor, plant, elevate, you can do your best to get a hand in his face, but Kevin Durant's not even bothered by that level of defense because he knows ultimately if the right hand's free, it's going in.
He had 25. The Nets advance. They're ready for Boston in the next round.
Now they don't have Robert Williams, so they have less of a presence in the paint, and we could attack Al Horford and Tice. So them not having Robert Williams is huge.
What did he say? All right, man. That's caffeine probably talking. Take some before the game. We don't need to say like that. Let's just go out there and hoop.
All right, so KD is not interested in a whole lot of conversation, but I want to show you how this all moved at Caesars. When the game ended last night, the Nets were the favorites, and so much money poured in so quickly that as of this morning, it has shifted 180 degrees. The Celtics are now the favorites on the other side. And before we talk about that, Legs, just how about that moment there where KD is basically having none of what could even remotely be considered trash talk?
Well, he's the guy that has to go out and average 30 in the series, along with Kyrie Irving. So to have another guy, very important guy, Bruce Brown, say that, I think that's what Kevin Durant said. Come on, we don't need to throw any challenges out there. Certainly dropping names of anybody on the other team. That's the last thing you want to do right now. Prepare yourself. They got themselves in the position that they wanted, which is to be the 7th seed, and now you get to go play the Boston Celtics. But ultimately, these are the two guys that have to cash those checks in that series.
That's right, and the Celtics are an entirely different level of defense, maybe the best in the entire NBA. But here was my thinking on why I just don't see people beating this team, because they had the two best players on the floor last night. And when Kyrie plays like that, they'll have the two best players on the floor every night, and that is Jason Tatum's a future MVP in this league, and Jalen Brown is fantastic. But KD is KD, and when Kyrie plays like that, I'll take him, at least on the offensive end, ahead of anybody else.
Well, here's the thing. Nobody has a fresher set of legs than Kyrie Irving. With all of the time he had off, right now, this feels like mid-November to Kyrie Irving. And you think about the star players and their responsibility through the 82-game season, and the way those guys feel right now physically. Kyrie doesn't feel like that, and you saw it by making 9 straight shots in the first half last night in his first really important game of the year for Kyrie Irving. So, look, I hear what you're saying. When you watch these two guys play the way they did last night, you say to yourself, man, they're capable of anything, and they are. Is it going to be shocking if a team with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving end up in the NBA Finals? Of course not. But here's the thing. I think you're discounting everything that Boston has been about for the last 2.5 months. This is a team that just went 26-6 to end the year. They're the #1 defensive team in the league, and they also have two guys capable of getting 60 points on any given night. So the question is going to be, can Brown and Tatum basically match Kevin Durant and Kyrie bucket for bucket? If that's the case, the overall team Celtics defense, I think, swings this in their direction. Look, Brown said it. He's right. Robert Williams is a big loss. you're going to still get pretty productive play out of Tyson Horford. You just won't get that elite level rim protection and the athletic play that you get at the rim that he provides. But they still have great defensive personnel across the board, a number of guys to throw at these two players, and you don't have to shut them down. You've just got to make them less efficient. And if you can do that, I think Boston has a great chance. So I'm banking on the two-star scorers with overall great team defense.
It's fair. And to be clear, the Nets had an inconsistent, up and down, and candidly bad regular season. So they don't deserve an easy road to the finals. Yeah. But they couldn't have gotten a harder one. By winning last night, they put themselves in the half of the draw that Milwaukee is in. So in order just to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, let's make it clear how this thing now shapes up. They will have to beat Boston, which most people think right now is as good as anybody in the NBA, and then they would have to beat the defending champs in the next round in order just to get to the conference finals. So the path for these guys could not possibly be more difficult.
Completely agree, and obviously that's assuming Milwaukee takes care of Chicago, which we expect that to happen. That's a 5 or 6 game series. Milwaukee is a champion that really cruised a little bit during the regular season. They came together at the right time. They got guys back at the key time. So you're right. Brooklyn's path, go through Boston. Now, if you get past this team on the road that's played as well as Boston has and is that good defensively, if you get through that series, you're going to feel very confident that you can beat the Milwaukee Bucks. You can't ask for a series to get you more tested for a deep run than the Boston Celtics because of what they are going to do to you defensively. From a personnel standpoint and also from a scheme standpoint, Ime Udoka, as the season went on, more and more comfortable in putting his stamp on adjustments within the course of the game. And I think maybe the single biggest X factor in the entire postseason is Marcus Smart, because of what he's going to get defensively, but then he also is capable of, having 5 threes in a game in an important moment. So that's a little bit more inconsistent, but that dual threat that he provides and the hustle plays and the energy and the emotion, Marcus Smart is so critical in this series.
Very quickly, the other thing that last night almost guarantees is that the matchup we've all wanted to see, at least, is very unlikely to happen. From the moment in February where the Nets and the Sixers made that trade, we were thinking, to see these two teams go head-to-head in a 7-game playoff series. The Sixers would have to come out of their side of this bracket. They'd have to get through first against Toronto, then we would expect Miami, and the Nets would have to win these 2 tough series. So Nets-Sixers right at this moment feels very unlikely.
Highly unlikely, and it was fun to play with that, but that means the Nets would have lost last night to position that to happen. Right. And now you put yourself in a 1-game-and-out scenario.
Right.
So they did what they had to do, and unfortunately, for all of us, we're probably not going to get that.
Yeah, to that point, Cleveland is not done. The Cavaliers now will play the winner of tonight's Eastern Conference play-in game which is between Atlanta and Charlotte. Yep. We will have that game here on ESPN. All right, much more from the hoops as we continue. But let me go to the NFL next, because the Bucks continue their voluntary offseason workout program in Tampa, and they do it without Tom Brady. He's not in attendance, but his brief return from retirement, or at least a return from a brief retirement, means there are high expectations for the Bucks this year, and they include those of his offensive tackle Tristan Wirfs.
I think it just opens up the window, again. With him at the helm, everyone's always excited, and I was excited either way, but having Tom Brady back there and getting to protect him for one more year, it's pretty cool. I got to go delete my Instagram post, like a big thank you and everything. So I'll have to postpone that.
All right, so he's postponing all of that. The window is what he's talking about, and that's the interesting piece of this, because with Brady, there's the runway, how long will this last, but every single year is Super Bowl or bust. Can he do it in this first year in the window?
Yeah, I don't think the window's open a crack. I think the window is wide open because even though they haven't returned the exact same roster, having Brady back in the fold completely changes the narrative for this team. I was there when they lost to the Rams. To lose by 3 points in the divisional round when your team is decimated by injuries, especially your offensive line, that unfinished business, tagline that Brady, I think that's going to be a big theme for them this year. Also, Todd Bowles being, it's not a redemption story. It's more like Todd Bowles 2.0. This is his second chance as a head coach. I think this team will be more physical, more aggressive, and I think they've got a good shot because the NFC is so weak.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what, Danny, you made an interesting point for those who are just joining us, and this could also, in theory, be like a fantasy point for folks that are already starting to think that way. But with Bruce Arians no longer there and Todd Bowles now the head coach, it could also impact just what we see from Tom Brady this season.
Yeah, we could see an offense that doesn't throw the ball as much. Todd Bowles is a defensive-minded head coach who now has his opportunity, as Kmart pointed out, like the 2.0 stamp. And he might go to Tom Brady and Byron Leftwich, their offensive coordinator, and say, hey, I want to run